Okay. Hi guys, my name is Harley Henderson, and today I will be discussing with you my political allegory based off of Arcane's depiction of discrimination, systematic racism, and corruption in politics. So my political era is actually the civil rights movement, and the reason I chose this era was because of its significance and because of the heavy presence of discrimination and systematic racism. So, moving along in the presentation, Arcane is a political depiction of the civil rights grit and determination to combat the discrimination and systematic racism they faced. So, that is specifically what I'm talking about. While Arcane depicts that these issues are a real thing and that they need to be addressed, Arcane also depicts the real, like the harsh realities of combating these issues when it's not publicized or like wanted, like if the era is not progressive enough. I wanted to shortly and quickly define discrimination real quick. Prejudice towards someone based on their sex, ethnicity, race, etc. Like no matter what, like if you're prejudiced towards someone based on that, like it's discrimination. Also, systematic racism, prejudice, or unfair treatment towards someone based on their membership of an ethnic group, usually stemming from I'm sorry, that's supposed to say societal culture or expectations. Excuse me, I did not mean to say suicidal. So what is Arcane and how does this connect to the civil rights era? So I've already kind of connected how this is, like I've already kind of stated how this is connected to the civil rights era. The civil rights movement addressed and tried to combat the racism that was profound in America, before segregation laws were in place, before Board versus Brown of Education was in place, before the Civil Rights Act of 1965, 1960, 1957. Before all of these things were created, there was a lot of division and confusion amongst America, and that's kind of how it connects to Arcane, because there was a similar dynamic. There were two cities, Piltover and Zon. They hated each other. They wanted nothing to do with one another. Piltover thought it was better than Zon, and Zon thought, it was it faced a lot of unnecessary hate, and that they just wanted to see the civilians of Zon like in the ground, basically. Like they didn't want them to see them succeed or anything like that. It's just that the two morals of the two cities were not aligned whatsoever. This also underlines political and governmental corruption, because of the fact that people aren't being represented and people aren't being heard. And this was also something that was going on during the civil rights movement, with different communities and organizations having a hard time being represented during the hardships of progressing as a society. So the main characters of Arcane are Violet, Powder, who later transforms into a persona Jinx, Vander, and Silka. So I want to touch really quickly on how I thought that Vander was very morally and politically, and like his policies basically were connected to Martin Luther King Jr. He was very rational and grounded, but also passionate in a way about seeing his people and seeing people he cared about succeed in overcoming adversity. But I also want to touch on Jinx, how she was very rambunctious, and she went against the traditional norms of trying to act within the lines of like civil disobedience, or trying to create deals with people and trying to be civil with government or police or anything like that. She kind of combated against that completely. She wanted nothing to do with it, which was also influenced by her after Vander died, her father figure Silco, who just wanted control and like was very authoritarian and just kind of shaped Jinx into who she was. The reason that I talk about Jinx in the way that I did is because of the Black Power movement. These individuals who were a part of the Black Power community felt horribly like misrepresented and undermined and just hated in their community. They felt like because of the fact that they were African American, which was true, that people just didn't want to see them around, and that and they kind of combated this with with feeling powerful about themselves and choosing not to like kind of lay down and let it surpass and be like more mature in a way. They decided to just act against it, just be rebellious in a way. They just wanted to see a change immediately. But on the flip side, we see Martin Luther King Jr., who was more of the patient and personable kind of figure, who wanted change, but also wanted it in a respectful manner that would condone them and put them in a light where they could be respected in the long run. And by they, I mean those are part of the civil rights movement. So the parallels that I want to highlight between the civil rights community and the civil rights movement in the Arcane community is they had horrible political leader corruption. The president at the time, even though it was the right thing to advocate for this movement, they weren't always on board with it, and they weren't always supporting them, and that creates a lot of mistrust, and it just shows like their true colors. I highlighted hierarchy because of the fact that in Arcane, whenever Silco takes over Zon, we see that he is like seen as all like powerful. He's seen as like someone who's untouched and someone you cannot mess with. And also in real life, we see that like, oh my god, excuse me, I'm sorry. We see that although it's in a different light, but Martin Luther King Jr., he's seen as like a very like powerful and influential person. Not so much like that he's trying to control someone or he's trying to like use someone, but he's just that impactful. Systematic oppression, like people who lived in Zon like usually could never get out of Zon. They stayed there their whole lives. They just kind of fed into that societal expectation of them as like they'll never be more than just someone who lives in Zon, like in an undercity. Connecting that to the civil rights movement, we see that African Americans, the people who kind of fed into the society expectation that they'll never be more than just like someone who's violent or someone who is uneducated or someone who like wants nothing more for themselves. They kind of just stayed where they were and they never really reached for more. Discrimination. Again, like I was saying, like if you were from Zon or if you were from Piltover and you came to Zon, they just saw you as a snob, or they saw you as someone who just wanted to take something for them or shove them further into the ground. And in real life, we see that like people in the Black community just saw like people who weren't in that community as someone who was trying to take them down. Usually, not always, but or as someone who, unless they express that they supported the civil rights movement, they just saw them as someone who just wanted to take them down. And then poor quality of life. We see in this picture down on the far left that Zon was just covered in smog and just horrible like conditions. And then on the flip side, in project communities like the projects, like there was a lot of gun violence, a lot of robbery, a lot of things going on that like that should have not been happening and should have been stopped by someone. But thank you so much for listening to my presentation. This was my overarching ideas of my paper and how I wanted these two things to connect, and I hope you had a great Thanksgiving break. Thank you so much for your time.